Who's overseas? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's Wednesday, January 12th. I want to welcome you to this morning's committee hearing. We've got 4 items that are consent items. We don't have a quorum at this point, Mr. City Attorney, so any action that will be taken will be deemed to communicate from the chair. With that said, Anne Marie, we're going to do items 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
So if you could start with item 2.
Sure. Item 2, CRA report and CLA report relative to a draft request for qualifications and outreach plan regarding the award of contracts to provide as-needed real estate consultant services and authority to extend current contracts for acquisition and relocation, appraisal, and property management services for an additional 6 months.
Okay, on that item, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 4.
CRA report relative to the CRA quarterly status report on CRA investments as of September 30th, 2010.
Okay, on that item, we'll receive and file the report from the CRA. Item 5.
Los Angeles Housing Department and CAO reports relative to a contract award to Charles and Cynthia Eberly, Inc., DBA The Eberly Company, for landlord outreach services for the rent escrow account program and utility maintenance program for a 1-year term with 2 one-year options to extend the term.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CAO report on that item, and that brings us to item 6.
Motion, Perry Parks, relative to the conduct of the 2011 Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count to determine the prevalence of homelessness in Los Angeles County.
Okay, on that item, we'll adopt the motion, so the actions will be deemed to communicate from the chair. So at this point, why don't we take item 1?
Communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Madeline Janis to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of Commissioners for the term ending November 4th, 2014.
Okay, please come forward. Okay, I think Andrew go. Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
In fact, before you start, we have a speaker card for Pat Stewart. You could just stay there, grab a seat. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Pat Stewart. I represent IBW Local 11, and I'm here to support the reappointment of Madeline Janis to the CRA Board of Commissioners. Madeline has been a longtime voice for working families, local hiring, and local income housing on the CRA board. She represents the best of what the CRA board stands for. Ms. Janis helped to create hundreds of jobs for city residents through local hire programs and the construction careers policy, a policy that simply would not exist without her leadership. Leadership that's helped developers build and at the same time ensured that strong communities were built as well. So we ask that Ms. Janis is reappointed to the board for another term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. How are you? How have you been? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you, Mr. Chair, council members.
Okay, we're joined by Councilman Reyes, so we do have a quorum. Maybe you can chat a bit about what you did before and what you plan to do in the future, and then I think Ms. Perry has a question or statement.
Okay, sure. It's my pleasure to be here again to be talking about redevelopment, especially this time when the whole idea of redevelopment is even being questioned. And so I think more than ever we need to come together as a city and really look at how we're going to together get out of this tremendous economic recession, especially the tremendous impacts that it's having on our poorest neighborhoods, which are neighborhoods we're targeting through our redevelopment programs. I've now served as a commissioner for almost 8.5 years, have had a tremendous amount of experience during that time. I am a passionate believer in redevelopment and the idea of targeting low-income communities and really focusing on the creation of good jobs and affordable housing and a healthy environment. I think that by working together with those communities, especially the residents of those communities and prospective developers, that we can actually create the kind of win-win that we wouldn't not be able to create without redevelopment. And that's a case that I plan to be making on our behalf with the state and with communities across the region that I have relationships with. I've learned a lot in the last 8.5 years.
8.5 years and you haven't had enough?
Yeah. Well, I believe that I serve on behalf of the low-income residents in particular of this city, and the working men and women of this city, and I constantly hearken back to a feeling of responsibility and duty that I have to those peoples, and to really think about the people of the city and how to make their lives better, and how to use the precious resources that we have at redevelopment, because they are precious resources, they are tax dollars, and how to use those to create the best results. And I have been asked by the mayor and by many people that I work with to continue to serve. I do have a long background in redevelopment. Before my current position as executive director of LANE, LA Alliance for New Economy, which is an economic development nonprofit, I actually was a land use lawyer at a major law firm, and I have a lot of experience looking at the legal sides of redevelopment as well as the political and the community sides of redevelopment. I think that, by and large, we do a good job. I think that there are places where we could do better. There are many things I've pointed out over the years about how we can strengthen our agreements, how we can strengthen our negotiations, how we can involve low-income community residents more in the process of redevelopment. I think sometimes we stick to a rather formulaic approach of PACs and CACs, and that there's a lot more we could do to really involve regular people's voices, make them feel more invested in redevelopment. That's something I want to work on more. I really believe that we are at this moment of opportunity where we're talking about green jobs in general, but I think that LA has still some amazing industrial land that is underutilized and that can be redeveloped in a better way. I believe that we need to not give up on industrial jobs and really think about how do we lift up our manufacturing sector. So I have a lot of ideas for continuing to do that work over the next period of time. And just to contribute to the overall city program, and I realize that these are really tough times, money is short. So I'm excited about putting my all as a volunteer into continuing to make redevelopment agency the best in the country.
Okay. Ms. Perry.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that I brought my daughter here with me today. So my daughter, who is beginning a career in the nonprofit world right now, and so I'm really proud of her and wanted to say
Okay,
that.
well, congratulations. You made her blush a little bit. I should make her come sit at the dais and talk about you. Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And first, I want to thank Commissioner Janis for her service to the Redevelopment Agency Board, and she is highly regarded, and I need to acknowledge that. As we discussed over the past month or so about being much more forthcoming in our examination of the activities, backgrounds, and records of commissioners, I feel it's incumbent upon me to make a few statements on the record today, because this has concerned me for a very, very long time, and I'm sure you're aware of it. I represent the 9th District, which probably has the greatest number of redevelopment areas within the boundaries of the district. So redevelopment has always been extremely important to me, and I've always been an advocate for redevelopment. My concern with Commissioner Janis is based on a framework of evaluation of development projects that go before the commission based or premised on established city policy, and my belief or my perception that instead projects may be evaluated based on the goals and the mission of the organization that she represents, LANE. No matter what, I feel that in many cases, and I will give you some examples, it has been detrimental to the goals of the redevelopment agency and, in my experience, has deferred or deterred private investment. Now, right now, if one were to examine how the CRA utilizes redevelopment dollars, it's pretty clear that a majority of the funds are being directed towards affordable housing. That's fine, that's good. I probably have more permanent supportive housing with wraparound services in my district because I've been a proponent of it than anywhere else in the city. Very little of those tax increment dollars are used for business creation or existing business retention or expansion. Now, I mention this to highlight the fact that most redevelopment funds are not being used to create permanent jobs, which are so desperately needed. I do talk to many developers. You would expect that I'm the councilperson for the area. And I know that the CRA, until very recently, with the change in leadership in the administration, had been a place to avoid. And I am hopeful that the board is going to be reconstituted and create more of a balance. Most of the developers do avoid the agency with the exception of the nonprofit housing developers. Now, I look back at August 2010, and the redevelopment agency had 128 active projects. 74 of those projects were housing and received $46.1 million in CRA funds. 44 of those active projects were public projects, including public improvements, community facilities, public facilities, and parks, receiving $25.8 million in redevelopment funds. Finally, 10 of the active projects were commercial, retail, and industrial. 7 of those were commercial, and 3 were industrial, totaling $29.9 million in redevelopment funds. Now, I understand the CRA must dedicate 20% of their funds to affordable housing, and I absolutely am not questioning the need for affordable housing in the city. However, I do question the extreme imbalance between housing and business. So I had to look at what city policies contribute to this imbalance. I know there is a perception in the development community that going before the CRA Commission is a gamble, and in order for the development community to want to engage the agency, there needs to be clarity and certainty. Evaluating development projects and their merits outside of established city policies is problematic, and it tends to lead to a dysfunctional culture that has prevailed in the agency over the last few years. For example, in December of 2009, a disposition and development agreement for 812 East 59th Street came before the Redevelopment Commission. The proposed project was located in the Goodyear Tract, which is the oldest industrial tract in the city, and is comprised of 208 acres. With 281 industrial parcels, it is the largest contiguous and self-contained industrial area in the city in the 9th District in South Los Angeles. The project consisted of soil remediation and rehabilitation of 2 contiguous existing buildings. The rehabilitation included structural upgrades and repairs, new electrical systems, new heating and cooling systems, new bathrooms, and the rehabilitation eliminated a nuisance building and attracted new business. The project will create 74 jobs within 5 years, and at least 50% of the jobs will be living wage. Additionally, the developer had agreed to have the on-site tenant meet all local hire requirements, and so that's easy to identify. The developer will lease the site to D&J Sportswear. Now, the facility is going to be used to manufacture clothing, with a portion of the building dedicated to cutting of fabric-related trim accessories. Now, the board considered this item on December 17th, 2009, and they had to continue the item until the 21st of January 2010 because the commission was stalled. Now, Commissioners Janice and Ling voted no on the project. And now Mr. Ackerman has passed away, but Mr. Ortiz voted yes. Now, shortly after, I believe, the preliminary vote in December 2009, LA Times ran an article, and it caused me a great deal of distress because I know how important every single job it is to bring into the south part of the district, the southern part of the city. The panel is divided on plan to bring jobs to South LA. A garment firm would hire 40 workers in 4 years. Some members of the Community Redevelopment Agency say that's not enough. And in the article, Ms. Janice was quoted as saying, "I'm really dubious about any garment manufacturer. Garment manufacturers, with few exceptions, have a long history of exploitation and treating their workers very badly." Now, this project was approved by the Commission, and the Council is moving forward. However, it was unnecessarily delayed due to personal beliefs that Commissioner holds about the garment industry. This concerned me, given the importance of the garment industry in the city and the fact that the developer had agreed to hire locally and to provide a majority of living wage jobs. Simply put, the project complied with established city policies, but was still subject to undue bias. Just to give you all a quick insight of the importance of the garment industry, in 2009, there were 6,872 garment or fashion establishments in Los Angeles County, directly employing over 100,000 people. I'm also concerned about a second issue. Now, there is a requirement that the redevelopment agency in its subcommittees rotate chairpersonship on an annual basis. I'm concerned that the commissioner brought forth a recent amendment to eliminate an agency bylaw that requires the CRA Commission subcommittees to rotate the subcommittee chair on an annual basis. Ms. Janis currently chairs the Strategic Initiatives Subcommittee and has been the chair since its inception in 2008. According to the current bylaws, the chair must rotate on an annual basis, and thus far that rotation has not been implemented. Now, we're in 2011. I'm certainly going to want to know why the agency hasn't rotated on an annual basis since 2008. I question why this amendment has been offered and question the purpose and necessity of that. To my knowledge, the Redevelopment Agency Commission is the only commission that has regular subcommittees, and in light of the agency's recent loss of almost one-third of its workforce through an early retirement incentive program, I may be headed towards asking that subcommittees be eliminated to save staff time and to consolidate public participation at the commission level, although the governor may take care of all of that for us. I know that the board will be considering this bylaw amendment at the next commission meeting next week, and I will be watching it very, very carefully as the item will be forwarded to the City Council for review. And I will be voting no today, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the public record. Mr. Chair, and thank you for giving me a moment to give my views.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Reyes?
What's unique about the city is every district is different. We all have our challenges. We all have our different approaches. And I respect Councilman Perry's point of view. I respect my colleagues and how they approach their goals. On my behalf, I believe, I've been able to work with the CRA in such a way where we have been able to do the necessary changes at the PAC level, at the CAC level, engage different sectors, stimulate different opportunities. I have not engaged the commission level at that depth, and quite frankly, the results have been fairly productive in many instances. We've had our challenges. We do go through these processes in which we try to maintain our focus on what is best for our communities and for the city. Ms. Janis Aparicio, I've known her since, well, I'm going to say how long ago?
25 years.
25 years. I think it was Carecen when you were working with the board, executive board. And we've seen our careers evolve over time and have been able to see how different issues have been addressed from the immigrant community to housing issues, well, the pressures of poverty and how it can crush people and how folks need to be able to stand up, and we need institutional strength within our own city, within our county, state, and federal government, and trying to get to those answers is not the easiest. So I want to thank you for your hard work. I know there is a balancing act we need to address when it comes to which sectors of our economy we need to strengthen, with the evolving change of our service sector, looking at how we can maintain our industrial base, at the same time looking at how we look at our geography, looking at our natural elements, looking at how we decentralize poverty. We have 660 acres. The Royal Sector Specific Plan that's right now in a place that is very exciting. We're expanding the CRA in the Northeast with the understanding that community is with us every step of the way. And the leadership of the whole board, as well as the staff and the hard work they have demonstrated to me, I applaud you, because the staff has gone through so much, they've endured so much, and they've been still able to produce. But of course, as Councilmember Perry has mentioned, Governor Brown has a certain perspective, and many of these issues are going to be addressed one way or another. But I think for the moment, Mr. Chair, we're in a position where we have to demonstrate that the CRA will and does increase our capacity to generate revenue, not only for the city, but for the county and the state, by addressing these needs and curtailing costs and other programs that essentially are just hitting our budget in a way that is just profound. $14 billion deficit in the state is a very real number. And how we address that as a city, as a community, is going to be significant. So I just want to say thank you, Ms. Aparicio, and again, the democratic process allows us to work with each other on one vote. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree, but we continue working together as one city, and I look forward to moving this item to the council.
Yeah, and Mr. Reyes, when I was Speaker of the Assembly, we had a $30+ billion shortfall, and there was no discussion of an assault on agencies that redevelop blighted areas. Anyway, with that said, what I want to do, Mr. City Attorney, because I believe Mr. Cardenas is en route, let's hold this. We'll move on to another item and, wait for Mr. Cardenas.
Mr. Chair, just, I would like to say a few words about the...
Yeah, you can go right ahead.
Councilmember Perry's.
No,
have
maybe...
to wait until Mr. Cardenas, Councilmember Cardenas gets here.
There he is. The man, the legend is here. We're being joined by Mr. Tony Cardenas. Okay.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that having interacted and worked with Councilmember Perry for a number of years, I have a tremendous amount of respect for your dedication to your district and to the poor neighborhoods of Los Angeles. And although we may disagree at times, I believe that we both are passionate from the heart about redevelopment and its purposes and what we want to achieve. We may differ in some moments, which I think, I respect our differences and appreciate the thought that you put into preparing your statement and appreciate that sometimes the things that I raise may be problematic, and so I wanted to start by saying that because I have tremendous amount of respect for especially the council members that represent our poorest neighborhoods. There are really two things that I wanted to address. One thing had to do with a kind of a constant implication that's kind of hovered over me for the past 8.5 years, that somehow I am in a conflicted position in various ways, that my service on the CRA board somehow represents a conflict of interest for myself, for my organization, for the movement that I work with, the labor movement in particular, but also communities. So I wanted to address that. And then I also wanted to, I think the garment factory example is a really good one of how we can agree on substance, on the purposes, but we can disagree on a particular project for very specific reasons. And that really just means that we disagree on a specific project. So there is this general idea that because I am the executive director of a nonprofit organization, the LA Alliance for a New Economy, it's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to create good jobs, to create thriving communities, to create a healthy environment. And part of what we do, it's not all of what we do, we do research, we do community organizing, we do communications, really about the importance of focusing on poverty and really lifting our communities and creating shared prosperity for our communities. So because some of what we do is try to change systems, we work on policy. And so some of our staff, the way that city ethics laws are defined very broadly. So even though everyone who works for Lane, including me, I make $80,000 a year after working 17 years. That's it. That's my salary. And everybody at Lane makes a modest salary, and that's it. Some of our staff are registered as lobbyists. And some of our staff, and that's because under ethics law, that's the requirement. And that's simply because they come and they advocate based on their passion and their mission, personal mission, the missions of their organization. I am, as a commissioner, prohibited from lobbying. That's a personal prohibition, which I follow scrupulously. You will never see me in City Council. You will never find me in one of your offices except talking about the CRA. I'm very careful. Lane's board, and I'm happy to have my board chair here, Maria Elena Durazo, has adopted a policy that prohibits the organization from accepting any money from developers that do business with the CRA. So we are very careful about maintaining a bright line. Now, there's the whole question of mission. And the mission of the agency, of the redevelopment agency, is to lift up poor communities in Los Angeles. That is a little bit overlapping with Lane's mission, which is to lift up poor communities in Los Angeles. But if anybody who had a similar mission in their life was prohibited from serving as a city commissioner, we would have a pretty paltry group of people who would be eligible to serve. I mean, I think that one of the beautiful things about our volunteer commission system in the city of LA is that we represent a variety of perspectives, and that they're perspectives. We have different viewpoints, and those are not because we're paid to have viewpoints, it's because we believe. And so I want to say that I really passionately do not believe that my serving in the CRA represents a conflict in any way. The second thing has to do with particular project, and there's this project on 59th Street, the garment factory. I do want to say that I've looked back as I've considered coming again before you. I have actually considered and voted on probably 1,000 projects. And over the past 8.5 years, out of that 1,000 or so projects, I have voted no on less than a dozen. So 98% of my votes and my work has been in strong support of every project that comes before me. Now, I look carefully at projects because I have seen us be sued and get into problems and not get the results we need to get for every precious dollar that we invest. So I look carefully at projects. The garment factory that we supported, we actually gave away the land, and we put in a number of, up to $10 million, I can't remember the exact number, to move a garment factory from Southgate to South Los Angeles. The number of jobs, the enforceability of the job creation requirement, the job creation language, I didn't feel was strong. I didn't think that the agreement was drafted well. I felt like there were some really serious problems with that agreement. I also didn't think that we should just simply give away land. I think we should do competitive bidding on land that we own. I think we should have more of an open process so that we can get the best possible deal. In that case, we did not competitively bid that land, which I felt was a violation of the spirit, if not the letter of adopted policy, which is that when we own land, we do an open process to give lots of opportunities. So I voted no on that project, not for ideological reasons, although I am suspect with garment factories. I am suspect. And I think the history of the garment industry in Los Angeles is one of very low wages. There's a big question about whether a garment factory can exist at paying a living wage, and whether they'll close doors and move to Mexico. There's a real question about that. But I voted no for principled reasons because I didn't think this was a good project. But in general, I want to say that I do believe in redevelopment. I vote for redevelopment, and I hope to be a force for good on an ongoing basis.
Okay, I think Ms. Perry.
Yeah, just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I'm not questioning whether or not you have a conflict of interest. My issue is, and I know how good of a lawyer you are, narrowly drawn to establish city policies, prevailing wage, living wage, first source, local hire, worker retention, those kinds of things. Are we inside or are we outside? Okay? And I look at everybody's record. And while you may not have only voted no on 12 projects or a few projects, let's say a few projects, there was a lot going on many of the projects that we were trying to get through the process, and some of it was pretty rancorous and pretty horrid. So nonetheless, on this particular case, and I only selected this case because I'm not psychic, but I just have this feeling you're going to get reappointed anyway. So I'm making the record here, and that's my right to do so. I'm the elected official. I have the right to do that. I know that back in 2007, the agency did go through its approval to acquire the land, and they shopped it around for 3 years, and then they found a buyer in 2010, the Ashagians, Mr. and Mrs. Ashagian. And in those 3 years, there was no direction from the agency because it was being shopped around. But ultimately, this deal was approved for form, substance, and documentation by the city attorney's office, and that is why it finally moved forward. So I just wanted to say that. As far as whether there's a conflict of interest, I'm certainly in no position to make that determination, and whoever is going to do something about that, God bless them, let them do it. It's not my issue. My issue is certainty, consistency, and when a developer enters the doors of the redevelopment agency, they know what to expect. They know, you're either in or you're out, and we're going to either get this project done or we're not. And I made no bones about saying over the past few years, I've actually told people stay the hell away from there because I can't guarantee your safety, basically. And you're probably the one who has the most strategic mind there in terms of weaving your way through what exists as current policy and your overall social mission, which in some ways exceeds the policies of the agencies on many occasions. I've said that time and time again. I only picked one example today because it was more recent. I also am not a particularly petty person, but if I have to, I'll go deeper. But I don't see any point in doing that other than I want to make the record today. I'm getting no political points for this. Nobody will love me after this, but that's not why I'm doing it. I want you to know how I feel. And the mayor's representative is here. I wanted her to be able to carry this back to the mayor, say it in a public way so nobody misconstrues my words or what I said, and that they're very clear about how I feel. I have no reason to not say this. It's important because we have a bigger battle ahead, and that's the potential loss of the agency. In spite of that, I wanted you to know, but I need to vote no on this, and appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that Mayor Villaraigosa made a statement of some kind that he was going to try to adhere to a two-term policy with his commissioners, maybe not to exceed that. That's not a law, it's not statute or what have you, but I'm just curious if you're aware of that statement at all.
I'd never heard that, actually, Councilmember, so...
You're not self-appointing, so it's not, it's not on you. I'm just curious because when somebody said that the mayor was going to put your name forth again for an appointment, I was curious. I said, well, how long has she been here? So this would be your third term?
It would be my second appointment by Mayor Villaraigosa, the first time I was appointed by Mayor Hahn.
Oh, maybe that's the thing, that he personally won't appoint. Okay. All right. I'll talk to the mayor and ask him what he meant. I wanted to ask, clarify something. You said just a few minutes ago in your statement that you're a paid person with Lane?
I'm the paid executive director, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
On salary.
Okay. Yet, Lane actually lobbies the CRA, communicates with staff at the CRA, communicates in board meetings, fills out, do they or not fill out not time cards, speaking cards or what have you, and speak to what Lane's position is or what they would like to see happen?
I'm really glad you brought that up, Councilmember. We have a very strict policy when it comes to the CRA.
Mm-hmm.
So if Lane staff is involved in any way, shape, or form, or Lane is involved in any way, shape, or form of any significance in anything coming before the CRA, I recuse myself.
Mm-hmm.
So Lane very, very seldom is involved. But in the case that they are, Lane staff or Lane as an organization is involved in a community where a project is, I will recuse myself. I meant in terms of other city policies before you and the city council or other agencies, the port or the airport. Lane staff, there are 4 or 5 staff that are registered lobbyists, which means they communicate with those departments on various projects that we're working on. I personally don't have any interaction with any city officials from any departments other than around CRA business.
Okay. And you mentioned that in your statement that you have voted no on perhaps maybe about a dozen or so times, but you're very methodical and try to look at every situation for what it is. But you gave one example of voting no just a few minutes ago, but also you mentioned something about competitive bidding on land and not giving away land. But with all due respect, having an entity pay for land is one thing. But one of the things that I've noticed in this city is there's a propensity for being lenient or easy or giving extra points or extra money to not-for-profits, but not having that equal effort when it comes to for-profit developers, such as for housing or economic development, what have you. Very few not-for-profits get involved in economic development, but they do get involved quite often when it comes to housing. So when you said that competitive bidding on land, do you make a differentiation between a not-for-profit that wants to buy a piece of land, yet at the same time they're using city funds or government funds to buy that land? It gets a little convoluted at that point versus a private developer saying, look, we're going to put outside hard dollars into this community, versus just saying, well, we're going to take money from this department to buy land, and then that money goes in, the money goes to that other department. How do you feel about that when it comes to not giving away land, yet at the same time it gets a little convoluted when we give $5 million from this department and then they buy the land off the CRA and the CRA ends up with that $5 million. Yet that entity, what's their investment in it? They just said, okay, give me money on the left and then I'll give it over here on the right.
Councilman Wright, agree totally that we need to have uniform standards for every company, every nonprofit, for-profit of any kind that does business with the CRA. So I think one of the things that I've advocated for more strongly maybe than others, and maybe that's because of my legal background, is I think we need to have fair rules that apply to everyone. We need to have strong enforceable agreements so we don't get ourselves into really bad situations where we're sued and we end up paying a lot more money, and that the perception of how we do business is seen as fair. And that's why I believe in general that we should use a competitive process when we have either a pot of money or we own a piece of land, that we should have some set approaches. So right now there's a lot of flexibility that individual project staff have. So for example, if there's a nonprofit developer that they like a lot, they could probably make it a lot easier than someone they don't know. And that happens in the for-profit world as well. That's why I think that there should be things like competitive bidding when we're either selling or giving away land. I think sometimes to make a project pencil in a poor neighborhood, we have to give away the land. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think we have to sometimes give grants, really they're loans, but that probably will never be repaid because in certain situations where something doesn't pencil. In general, I think we should get the best deal possible, and that happens with a good, open, competitive process. And so those are the kinds of things I advocate for in general. And believe me, I scrutinize nonprofit developers as much as I do for-profit developers. I look to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
It's funny. See, the thing is, again, I mentioned the word convoluted, but your answer is a little convoluted because you just mentioned that we shouldn't give away land, yet at the same time, if it's a certain neighborhood or what have you, maybe we should, right? Or maybe we should actually allow somebody to do so and give them a loan that might not be repaid. But with all due respect, a loan and a grant are two different things. A grant tends to be something that is not repaid, right? Kind of like a scholarship, a grant. For those of us who went to school, I was fortunate to get scholarships and grants. I didn't have to pay them back. But if I got a student loan, then I was expected to pay it back slowly or quickly or what have you. So again, that actually makes my point. My point is, if you want to meet your objective, I think ultimately your objective and my objective is the same, and that is to maximize development, maximize housing or whatever it is to the people who need it the most, that otherwise it wouldn't happen without some kind of assistance or some kind of interjection from an organization like CRA to maximize it.
I agree.
So, but the thing is, if we give money that was intended to be loaned out, say it's $2 million, and then if we get it back, then we get to resubmit that out into the community to create some more good projects, right? But if we give $2 million, and using your words, that perhaps might not get paid back, we give a loan of $2 million, perhaps might not be paid back, then that's $2 million that won't go back into the community of Los Angeles. How do we reconcile that? I don't.
I believe that we should get the most for our money. And so
Exactly.
by and large, I think that loans are better than grants. And in fact, there's a prohibition under state law to give away public funds. So we really have to be getting something in exchange. My point on the competitive bidding on land is that I don't necessarily I think we should get the best deal by using competitive processes. I think that if a deal just doesn't pencil, really doesn't pencil, but it's going to be tremendous benefit to that community for lots of reasons, then there could be situations where we would give away the land. But I think that needs to be after a lot of competition. I do think I've seen many instruments, a lot of creativity in the way we develop our loan instruments, for example. There's something called residual receipts loans, which essentially are grants. So we give away a lot of residual receipts loans. We never expect a project will ever have the receipts on an ongoing basis to be able to pay it off. And as long as the project is meeting its goals, its missions, as defined in its agreement, then it never has to pay a dime. But it's called a loan. So I think that what my major concern is, let's get the most for our money, and let's get the most bang for the buck in terms of real benefits to our communities.
Well, I just have a couple more questions, Mr. Chairman. But one of them is...
We do have like 3 other items.
Okay, one of them is, the first real interaction I had with you, other than saying hello and meeting you in the hallway or what have you, was when I went to the CRA board and I actually filled out a comment card and I made a comment on a project that was going through the CRA and it was being voted on at the CRA board. I don't know if you remember, but a couple of board members seemed to be appalled and shocked that council members such as myself would go and speak to the CRA board. I don't remember there being any bad words or any high volume of comment during that CRA board when it came to me testifying, and also some of the board members actually dialogued with me while I was there in open public on the mic. But lo and behold, after that, several periodicals reported that some of the board members, including you, were shocked that the a council member or two actually went and spoke to the board or what have you. Since I did that on the open mic and you're here now, I just want to ask you, what about that situation deserved that kind of comment?
First, I want to just say as background, that was a very tough project because we had the Alexandria Hotel. We had probably at least a dozen meetings where we had huge numbers of the tenants, mostly disabled tenants, coming into to our meetings time after time to complain about treatment and conditions there. And it was a confusing and volatile situation. That said, I really apologize if any of my comments and sometimes things that someone says to the press, and I think that I made an unwise decision, frankly, in talking to the press about that at all. I thought that I felt a lot of pressure in general around that project and a lot of concern about, was I going to do the right thing? What was the right thing to do on that project? But I thought, I never found that any of your participation was anything but cordial and helpful and well-intentioned. So if anything that I said suggested otherwise, I really apologize.
And just so that people understand, Madeline and I had an opportunity to run into each other once again, and she asked me how I felt about her appointment, et cetera. And I let her know that as far as I'm concerned, I will be voting for her reappointment or what have you. So for those of you who think that off the mic that her and I treat each other any differently than you're witnessing right now, we don't. So I appreciate your comments. One last point is this. It's my understanding that in this country, and Los Angeles is no exception, when it comes to affordable housing, that 80% of the public money that goes into affordable housing, 80% goes to not-for-profit organizations, yet 20% of the public money that goes into affordable housing goes to for-profit organizations. I think it would behoove you, with your private interests and your private philosophy, and with your responsibility as a CRA board member, that you look into that and then try to figure out how that fits with what you just answered. And what I agree with you with is to maximize the net effect of public dollars that goes into communities. And if that's the case, if it's 20-80, 80-20, there's something wrong. Because if we actually put 80% of the money where the most of the housing is actually servicing individuals and families, then I see that as a win all the way around. But there's, in my opinion, too many agencies that just get enamored with the idea that if it's a not-for-profit, we need, instead of giving them $2.4 million to make it pencil, as you pointed out, we give them $8 million. But if we gave it to a for-profit who can give us the same number of units, quality units, and we spent the $8 million, we might get 4 times as much housing. And in my opinion, that's the best scenario for you as a CRA board member, for me as a policymaker who represents one of those poor communities, and also for the community at large that'll have 4 times as much housing, quality housing, because that particular entity, unfortunately not a not-for-profit, actually is having a better quality output of greater numbers so that we can house more people in quality housing.
I don't disagree. I think we need to get the best deals possible, regardless of who
But please, let's you and I dialogue further. Help me understand whether or not my numbers are right or wrong. And then if they're right or wrong, let's dialogue about how we, as a city, and you, as a CRA board member, can actually help make sure that we maximize the output to the community, to the families, to the development world, so that we have more jobs and more housing for the people who need it the most.
I would love to do that. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Okay. Seeing and hearing no more questions. Sharon, I think what we're going to have to do here is a roll call vote, and I think that that's on you. So would you start it with, I guess, did it start with the chair?
Yes, I start with the chair. Councilmember Wesson,
Wes and I.
Councilmember Reyes,
Yes.
Councilmember Perry,
No.
Councilmember Cardenas.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's been approved, and it will be forwarded to the council, I believe, today.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, and it's a pleasure to meet your daughter. She disappeared. Oh, there she is. Okay. Now, you want to step out for 1 second?
Yes, I wanted to say for the record on item number 3, out of an abundance of caution, Mr. Gabay and Mr. Kramer have sued me personally for the last 3 years to unseal my divorce file, which is a matter of public record. And so and while Mr. Gabay is not named in the pleadings and meeting with their representative, it is quite clear that he is deeply engaged in not only paying the lawyer's fees, but engaged in the litigation. So out of an abundance of caution, I would like to recuse myself and remove myself from the room, and we'll do the same thing and make the same statement downstairs on the record during the council meeting.
Okay. So, if you could read item, you get a haircut. We got a haircut.
this already.
All right. We did it, but we did it last year.
Yeah, last year,
Okay.
exactly.
All right, item 3.
CRA report and CAO to report relative to authority to execute a settlement agreement with M&A Gabay, Armand Gabay, and the Charles Company to provide a payment of $300,000, offer a first right of refusal, and negotiate an exclusive negotiating agreement for the property at 3990-3914 Jefferson Street in settlement of lawsuits and claims. Slauson Central Retail Project located at Slauson and Central Avenues in the Council District 9 Recovery Redevelopment Project area.
Okay, then on that item, without objection, we will adopt the CRA report. Anne Marie, at this time, we do have a quorum. Somebody can tell Ms. Perry she can come back. The items 2, 4, 5, and 6, Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Reyes, if you don't have a problem with those items, I'd like to count them as yes votes on items 2, 4, 5, and 6. Okay.
Item 4 was received and filed.
Yeah, okay.
2,
2, 5, and 6 then.
aye.
All right, that brings us to items 7A, B, and C, and if I could get, before we bring them, Larry, before I get you up, I've got some public comments. Ruth Sislowski, Marvin Martinez, and Mr. Mr. Falit, you know who I'm talking. Just come up, because I don't want to butcher your name.
Shall I read all three, sir?
Okay, sit, and then I'm going to have, you come up and have Anne Marie read the items.
Okay, item 7A, communication from the mayor relative to the budget for the 37th program year Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan, CDBG, Home, HOPWA, and ESG for the 2011-12 fourth year action plan. Item 7B, Community Development Department report relative to authority to release a request for proposal for the new Los Angeles Business Source System. And item 7C, motion Garcetti Labange Hahn relative to transfer of funding from fiscal year 2009-10 Cultural Affairs Council Civic Fund account to the Cultural Affairs Department for the continued operation of art facilities. Motion Garcetti Labange Hahn, also referred to Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, now if I can get Marvin and Felicito to come up now. And you are first.
Hello, I'm Ruth Zaslowski. I'm the Program Director for the West LA Family Source Center.
Yes.
We're one of 21 family source centers funded by the Community Development Department. First, I would like to thank the Mayor's Office, the City Council, and the Community Development Department for creating the Family Source System. This new system of delivery has proven very efficient in providing much-needed services to the low-income residents of the City of LA. For example, every Family Source Center is a VITA site assisting people with preparing their tax returns. The Family Source Center also coordinates efficiently and leverages resources with LAUSD, the LA County DPSS, the GRID program, and the Work Source Centers, to name a few. These coordinated efforts have resulted in more comprehensive service delivery and even greater assistance to our clients. As you know, we're finding ourselves serving residents who've never before needed assistance, as well as residents whose needs have significantly increased during this recession. For example, our food pantry program, which used to average 5 new enrollments per month, now averages 20 new enrollments monthly. Additionally, over 85% of these clients are remaining in food assistance beyond 1 year, which is a marked increase over previous years. The Family Source System, in only its first year, has become recognized as the City of Los Angeles' response to poverty. And the ability to provide these services and leverage existing resources, such as through the 1E app application system, is a much needed. The Family Source System, to name some statistics, has increased family income by over $4 million, assisted over 3,200 people through the 1E app electronic application process, and we've helped over 400 youth increase youth academics. Our Family Source Center alone has helped 24 people find long-term employment and increased family income for our participants by over $400,000 in just our first year. As you may be aware, the proposed consolidated plan suggests a decrease of 8%, and we are hoping that you can continue to fund the Family Source System in whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Hello, good morning. My name is Marvin Martinez. I'm president of Los Angeles Harbor College. I'm here to speak in support of the LA Business Source System. And let me just make a couple of points about it, which I think will demonstrate, why there's a need for a program like this today. Obviously, the devastation of the budgets statewide and all that have put in hamper in terms of our ability to hire more staff. We need to find a method. We need to find a vehicle that will provide for us an opportunity to create some new jobs in this area. This system allows us to invest in businesses so that new businesses could be established, so that current businesses that are existing could be expanded. We know that that could result in new people being hired. Given at a time when, there isn't many other areas that will be hiring, certainly Harbor College or the LA Community College District, given that there was a $400 million cut, which will result for LACCD into about $40 million cut for us, we're not going to find those jobs coming up. So we certainly need to find a new way, and we think this could serve as a vehicle to establish that. Secondly, what I'm also here to say is that, the college system is very much in support of this program because we certainly have the ability to match what it could do in terms of providing our facilities to businesses so they can come and take advantage of a campus like Harbor College. I always like to tell our local community that Harbor College is a $30 million entity located in that community, and our purpose is to serve that community. We have the facility to help the businesses, we have the curriculum, so we can certainly support the city in its efforts and match in any way possible to ensure that businesses will be successful in our communities, thus creating some new jobs. So, thank you.
Thank you. And if I can get Tammy Membrano to come up. Thank you, Mr. President. Felicito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Felicito Cahayan. I'm representing the Los Angeles Community College District. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Workforce and Economic Development. Just a few points when it comes down to the past 12 months. The district, in partnership with various agencies and stakeholders in the city, we procured a lot of training and employment grants from the state and federal level. With that type of aggressiveness, we were very successful in securing a lot of those awards. In hindsight, we've identified that training is not enough, education is not enough. There has to be more on the business service side. So with that said, I want to emphasize my support for this proposal and item, and we look forward to utilizing and leveraging the district's resources to help the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Membrano. I am the Executive Director for Barrio Action Youth and Family Center. We are the FSC Family Source Center for the Lincoln Heights, El Sereno area. We are here this morning because we are obviously concerned with the cuts that are happening throughout the city, but really the FSC system has been able to provide a lot of the services to many of the areas that are in the most need. Our FSC has two very distinct zones. As Mr. Reyes probably knows, Lincoln Heights is totally different than El Sereno. And as one large zone, we provide the services that emphasizes the provision of services for the working poor, those families who need the glue to keep them together. A lot of the referrals are coming through now as part of the grid services. Services that are not being able to offered through the grid services are now being offered through the FSC. But most importantly, the FSC has been able to make us, all the nonprofits working on this, accountable for the services in terms of numbers, in terms of accountability, in terms of how the entire system needs to work and needs to become stronger and a much better and much higher quality delivery system than we had before. And I think for us, that challenge has been a great challenge to be able to get to know what are some of the areas and what are some of the needs that need to be directly addressed as a family source center. So I'm here today to have this committee take a look closely at where the cuts can be made, and we know and we understand that the cuts need to be made, but we're just saying that an 8% cut will be detrimental to the service delivery for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Larry, if we can get you and your team to come forward. And I think, Andrew, if I'm right, this is for the last couple of years, we've done this in a timely fashion. So I appreciate that very much.
We lost our Christmas over it, but we got it to you before the end of the year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So anyway, you're up.
Council members, thank you very much. This has been a huge piece of work, partially because we have less money to work with this year than we've had in a long time. So that's the painful part of the story. So this year we've gone, last year we had $103 million in the CDBG funds to move forward. This year we'll have $92 million, so it's an 11% across the board cut that we're having to deal with. Sally Richmond is here to deal with home dollars, HOPWA dollars, and ESG, which is largely kept intact. The reason there's 11% cut is primarily because we have less program income. CRA, we went from $5 million last year to $1 million this year in program income to be able to support the consolidated plan. We had an over-obligation of $7 million last year. We're continuing to over-obligate $4 million this year, but that's had a significant impact on our ability to move this forward. And then we have less program savings. this year compared to the previous year. I think it's one thing that is important to understand is that this may not be close to that's the pain, but the horror story is potentially coming at us in March. And so let's just be aware of the circumstances. When they did the lame duck session, they were able to get certain things through the lame duck session, but the omnibus budget bill did not get through, and the Republicans on the House managed to set up the fight to take place on all block grants. It's only funded through March the 11th. So all block grant funding is now inserted directly into the middle of the federal budget battle. Republicans in the House have vowed to bring all funding back to the 2008 level, which means instead of an allocation of $78 million this year, which is we predicted as level funding, would be $71 million. The Senate can block this. They're the votes to simply have a continuing authorization, which would keep it level at $78 million. But we also know the House is already thinking through their positions because they're going to want something out of this budget battle as well. And there's talk about a 25% cut at the highest level. So we have to mobilize all of our forces to protect our federal, block grant funds. But that is the horror story. So we're going to have to pass a consolidated plan without knowing what our real allocation is going to be, and we're going to have some fallback strategies in our thoughts as we go forward. So that's important framing. I do want to say that as a result of this 11% cut, what we did is we first started a 5% across-the-board, effort to see what that would look like. We ended up with an 8% across-the-board effort. I do want to let Tammy know, because I didn't quite understand it until right now, but actually most of the Family Source Centers are funded with CSBG funds, which are not going to maintain that kind of cut. So the 8% is in the $5 million that goes to the Family Source Centers. 10 million in CDBG. So it'll be less than 8%, probably, I would say, maybe about 4% cut. I could be wrong about this, but I believe it's about half-half between CSBG and CDBG in terms of the Family Source system, in terms of the cuts that are coming to that system. We are, part of the Family Source Centers on the west side, so there will be extra pain on the west side in the West Valley, because part of those systems have been funded with ARA funds. So you'll be aware of that there will be some pain and some concerns from those parts of town. But that was based on the amount of poverty. We have divided up the resources exactly based on where poverty is in the city of Los Angeles. So overall, by categories, we're looking at an 8% across-the-board cut to nonprofits from these sources of funds. There will be some concerns from the homeless advocate community, and reasonably so, and others. We've done one place where we looked at some additional dollars based on the success of the Summer Night Lights program, and primarily because we've been able to leverage it at least 50% with philanthropic dollars, and we will raise additional philanthropic dollars. We're talking about taking it from $1.2 million to $1.7 million and going from 24 parks to 32 parks. And the January crime data will determine which parks it will grow to, but you should keep your eyes on that ball as well. But there'll be 8 additional parks we'll be able to run programs. That's one of the only places where there's additional funding. We are funding the Human Relations Commission, so there's a line item there. We're funding the Commission on Community and Family Services prior to the Children, Youth, and Families from the CON plan. So those are the other 2 line items that are new that you'll see. We worked with the Housing Department very carefully to work with them rather than across-the-board cuts, asking them how they would like to experience the pain, and they have come up with a single program elimination that they think the Handy Worker program can largely cover. But you're going to want to, talk to the Housing Department about that. But we've worked closely with the Housing Department to get their input on this, and Sally Richmond is here for a comment on that. On economic development, we did put a little bit additional dollars into economic development this year, primarily because of the purpose of HUD funds and because of the desire in this environment to help support economic development. There are 4 major pieces of economic development we're focused on. One is existing small business support, and so the Business Source Center RFP to create the LABAPs, the business assistance programs, to build this new business source system that goes from a kind of micro enterprise program to a small business program that really connects them up to city contracting opportunities, connected up to our local hire strategies. That piece of work is funded through this consolidated plan. The LABAPs have traditionally been funded here. New business development and strategic technology sectors, you'll see $1 million for the Clean Tech Business Incubator and 1.5 for the Port Tech Business Incubator, and we think those are opportunities to generate jobs citywide through an incubator process. And then we have gap financing for, you'll see again, Marlton Square. Meta Housing is actually going to be able to complete, we believe, this year, Buckingham Place, which is the first time we actually, and we're very close to site control on everything on the north side of Marlton Square. There's $1 million for District Square. There's additional funding under business attraction and retention for the Gensler Northeast Valley Industrial Expansion, Calco, Wilmington Industrial Track, and Pico Boulevard. So those are the economic development activity that's funded through the consolidated plan. And then there's one small item which we inserted at the very end, which was trying to find some support for the arts centers in hopes of leveraging additional dollars as they were being forced to shut down. That's $140,000. So those are the changes or the things that you may not immediately, see and understand.
Well, where it relates to the cultural centers,
Yeah.
That's item 7C, and we need to take action on that today. The other two items, I think we will continue, but on item 7B, I would like to forward that to the Jobs Committee.
That would be great.
And I'd like to ask the CAO and the CLA to look at a way to restore the cuts to AIDS and HIV prevention, domestic violence, shelter operations, the homeless, and the family source center. So if I could direct that. So that's where I am and my concerns. So any questions? Mr. Cardenas, and then Mr. Reyes as well.
Okay.
But is that, Anne-Marie, we've got that?
I got it.
Sharon, we've got okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Today is just a report. We're not voting on the item. I guess it's going to give us, the council, an opportunity to digest the mayor's proposed budget, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
we're
and then
continuing those items.
All right. Well, also I'd like to clarify, the mayor's proposed budget for this 37th year CDBG consolidated plan, is this something that we have to ask the mayor's permission to change, or is this something that's a document that's a living document within the council?
No, and we
and then
work
can make
with it, we work with them, and we always put our
All right.
fingerprints on it.
Well, my number one priority was conveyed to the mayor's folks, and it did not get funded, so I just want to let you know, don't be disappointed if we're going to continue that dialogue to try to figure out how we get that item funded. Okay.
You may want to put that on my radar, because I'm not aware of what that
my
is.
staff's going to get that over to
Okay.
Andrew. So if Andrew drops the ball, we'll blame it on him.
Yes,
But,
I will.
Is that on ICON, our hope is, and I don't know if there should have been a conversation between yourself and
Yes.
CDD about the possibility of ICON participating in the business source RFP, because that would guarantee it future long-term funding
Yeah.
and additional funding as well. So we're
Yeah.
hoping that they would participate.
So on that note, Larry, we're looking at the clock. On that note, we did get that message at the same time, to use a silly little cliche, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Yeah.
Right now, I need to make sure that we have a bird in the hand through this plan, and if we were able to do so in the future, we could obviously have some kind of agreement where that entity could, if we're supplanting dollars to that entity in that competitive process and they were to get it, then we could go ahead and have an agreement with them that they would forego that, and then we'll be back for us to reprogram.
I understand.
Okay? And then, unfortunately, that might actually be something that would work, because if the feds and the Republicans hit us, we're probably going to have to consolidate dollars back, correct? Unspent. So that might be an opportunity to satisfy that, should that new competitive process actually work out. So I'm very well aware of that. I think that's being creative, and that is a possibility. But again, a bird in the hand is what we have before us. That organization is in fact doing a lot of wonderful work already. And as we're all well aware, our not-for-profits don't survive very well, especially in this climate, with a gap of a couple of months of funding or what have you. So we need to make sure that we have smooth and constant opportunities for, at least, certainly for all the not-for-profits, and that's a particular one in the Northeast Valley that's doing great work.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Could I just introduce also Debbie Wood, who is
I
now
had earlier today.
the Executive Director of the Commission on Community Family Service, and they are going to be doing a whole community process. And then I also want to thank Richard Bembo and the great work of CDD to put the all of the initial work together to make this happen. And then Anna Lynn Rossio, who is the new Rhonda Gaston. This is her first full comp plan, and she is a huge asset to the city and has been an incredibly great broker of this conversation.
Wonderful. Mr. Reyes.
Yes, I have a series of report backs, so I'll just cut to the chase. The family source centers that are being reduced, I'd like to understand the impacts of having the Centro del Pueblo, CCNP, and Barrio Action Center for District 1. There'll probably be quite a bit of public comment in this process, but we should be able to have the CLA and CAO to report back on impacts of program delivery given the reduction. So at least they understand the overall blow that we're going to be taking. The Youth Recreation Nutrition Program, RAP, that's been reduced by 8%, and they provide lunches for at-risk youth during the school hours. We can direct the CLA and CAO to report back on impacts of reduction relative to how many less kids will be provided meals. On the summer lights, we increased it by 32 parks, as you indicated, Mr. Frank, so we can direct CLA CAO to report back on what process will be used to identify which parks will be included as part of this expansion. I know you mentioned the grid and crime, but we wanted to see the framework. On the day laborers program, it's being reduced by $95,000. We can direct the CLA and CAO to report back on status of existing programs and whether existing programs are turning away potential clients due to lack of funds. The mayor's office recommending consolidation of business assistance centers. We can direct the CLA CAO to report back on the description of the new program and how the elimination of existing service providers will impact the ability to attract new businesses. Mayor's office also recommending funding for 2 tech incubators, Clean Tech and Port Tech. We can direct CLA CAO to report back on how many total jobs will be created and what additional resources will be leveraged through these 2 projects. SOLIF has been an amazing organization, and they're trying to establish themselves with the purchase of their own building in District 13, actually, and they're asking for $1.2 million, and we know we are challenging them to come back with private sector leveraging. So I'd like to direct CLA CAO to report back on the feasibility of identifying funding in the amount of $500,000 and to work with CDD to accomplish this objective. And last but not least, we can direct CLA CAO to report back on the feasibility of funding for the Lincoln Heights City Jail feasibility study, the Westlake Theater, the Taylor Yard Transit Village payback, and Las Villas. So it'll be 4 to 5 entities that we're working with. And again, these are all job generators that have potential to increase our asset base as a city, because these are relations we've developed, and I look forward to seeing how we can address those. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any more questions or concerns where it relates to this? Then, without objection, we continue 7A. We forward 7B to jobs, and we will adopt the motion 7C where it relates to the cultural affairs funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there any more business before this committee?
No, there is not.
Then this committee is adjourned.